Are you ready to embark on a journey of success? To discover your true potential in the untold stories of careers in life sciences? Welcome to Pathfinder by the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. With your host, Tommy Soares, discover the untold stories of industry scientists and unveil the secrets to excelling in your career. Thank you for joining us once again, and remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Welcome, everybody. My name is Tommy Soares. I'm the Director of Scientific Strategy and Relations for the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. And today I'm Pathfinder. I have the pleasure of welcoming Anis Fahandej-Sadi, who is the current founder and head editor of TLDR Biotech, a daily biotech and pharma-focused newsletter. After finishing his master's in chemistry back in 2018, Anis made the move out of the lab and into scientific sales, where he spent the next 4 and a bit years selling capital equipment and service in the life sciences and biotech space. After this, he jumped into the entrepreneurship arena, first building a career coaching business, helping scientists move into sales and business development roles, and now with TLDR Biotech. Welcome, Anis. Thank you so much for taking time to tell us about your career, taking time to tell us some guidance as you've gone through your trajectory. I'm so excited to talk to you, first because you're Canadian like me, and so go Canucks. And the other,
Awesome.
the other thing is, man, like, what a trajectory you've had to jump from that master's degree straight into the business side. And I really want to hear a little bit about that, because I know there are a lot of people in the audience that have these questions. They have these ideas that they don't know if to jump or not. And I want to hear all about you and the courage it took for you to do this jump, and what led you to it.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Tommy, and thank you for the opportunity for this conversation. I didn't realize you were Canadian. Yes, go Canucks. I'm based in Vancouver. Did you watch Game 7
No,
this year?
I didn't. In Indiana, we're not exposed to as much hockey as I wish we were.
For sure. Yeah. But that was a rough one, so we almost won, but that
Yes.
happens. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I guess yeah, we can get into it. Moving from being a scientist into sales, it sounds like a huge jump, and it kind of is in a way. But I think for people that are considering doing that, it there's almost an intrinsic push towards it. Like from my experience, the way that I felt, I really got my start in sciences in first year undergrad. I kind of knew that I wanted to do some sort of scientific enterprise. I didn't really find myself drawn towards any of the arts or psychology or anything like that. And engineering was too much math, and math was too much math, and then biology was too much memorizing. So it was almost a process of elimination. But then I found out about organic chemistry, which to some people makes them run for the hills. But for me, I thought it was super intriguing because it's like a puzzle. It's like Lego.
Yeah.
You get to
Yes.
just put pieces together, right? So that really caught my attention. I was super excited about that. And then I found out about organometallics, and I was like, oh my gosh, you can put metals into organic things. And my brain exploded, and I got super motivated and excited about that, and did some summer research during my undergrad, and then finally thought that the next logical move was to go to grad school and get a PhD, because when you're in that academic bubble, it's very easy to just stay on the track. And for some people, it's the right thing to do, right? Like there are some people that are super motivated and absolutely love what they're doing, and they should get a PhD. They should go on to academia or industry as a scientist. But some of us, like me, didn't really consider other options. And so when I got to grad school, and I started working in the lab, and my supervisor at the time, his name's Rylan Lundgren, absolutely amazing guy, was super supportive throughout the whole thing, but ran a very tight ship. And I think pretty quickly I knew I was not cut out to get a PhD. And I also understood pretty quickly, if you're going to go get a PhD, you need to be willing to work super, super duper hard and be the best at it. You can't, pardon my French, but you can't half-ass a PhD, or you shouldn't half-ass a PhD. So I think within about a year, I was like, okay, this is probably not working. And then I decided to, okay, I'm gonna master out. And then there is one thing I missed out of the bio that you mentioned, was I actually took a year after my master's and I taught English in South Korea. I did the typical thing that a lot of people do when they're trying to figure out what the next step is. And I think at the time I knew I wanted to get into sales, but I wanted to take a break because I had just done school, like since basically early high school. I hadn't taken any breaks or done anything really unconventional, we'll call it. So that was my opportunity to really jump into something different. So I did that. Then I came back to Canada. And at that point, it was like, okay, now time to find a role, like time to get into sales. And so from there, I've had 3 roles. One was at a liquid handling instrumentation manufacturer out of Vancouver. The second one was at Vanorex, which was acquired by Cytiva right before I joined. So they make aseptic fill finish robotics, big automated systems to fill syringes, vials, and cartridges. And the last one was at Omnia Bio, which is a subsidiary of CCRM, which is the Center for the Commercialization of Regenerative Medicine out of Toronto. And they do stem cell work as well as and they're a cell and gene therapy CDMO. So after that, it's not a long stint. Like 4.5 years in sales isn't a long time. I'm in my early 30s. I'm not like old. I don't have years and years of experience. But at that time, I kind of thought, okay, I'm at a point where I've done the corporate thing, I've done the job thing, and my partner runs her own remote business, and we have a bunch of friends that are running their own businesses. And I wasn't really surrounded by entrepreneurship as much during grad school. Like, it was very single track. Even when you get into the workforce, everyone is, an employee, which is fine, right? That's something that I might return to at some point if the thing I'm doing right now doesn't work out. But I thought, okay, why not give this a shot? Why not try to start my own thing? And that's where the first thing I did, the career coaching platform, came in, which was Science to Sales. And that one was my first attempt. So we'll call it ill-fated, just because I had done some market research. I had launched it. I had a handful of clients, and there are some people that are succeeding in that space when it comes to helping PhDs move into industry, which is a very, we'll call it sought after transition, because I know a lot of PhDs. I've heard of what a postdoc is like. And ideally, unless you really, really want to become a prof, which is becoming increasingly infrequent these days, you want to get into industry. And so that kind of played on the whole, hungry audience sort of thing. Like, you're not going to pay $12 for a hot dog, but if you're in a baseball stadium, that's your only option, you're gonna pay for it. So yeah, those people that are doing that are doing quite well. But for me, helping scientists move into sales, it's a pretty niche transition when you think about it. Like commercial roles, it's not exactly super common or super known about even. And I think the other thing is, people that are in sales or want to get into sales, they have a specific mindset. They have a specific go-getting attitude. They're going to try and figure it out themselves. They're going to be very self-driven. So that also kind of played against that idea. The one organization I'll shout out, though, for anyone that is listening to this and interested in moving into sales from a scientific role, is Succession. It's run by these 2 guys from Synthago, or they're both previously from Synthago. They're helping mainly life science professionals move into sales roles. But the advice they have is applicable to basically any scientist that wants to move into sales roles. All right, and then the last most recent thing is TLDR Biotech. So this spun out from my around middle of last year. I started to do these compilations on LinkedIn, which were I cheekily called them the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm.
And so they were basically here's the biotech news stories from the week, organized by good news, bad news, and ugly news. And there was a logo, it was like a logo compilation, and it was every week or twice a week. And I got pretty good attention on LinkedIn from that. But the format kind of got stale. And I thought, okay, I'm focusing on this career coaching thing. I should probably just hone in on this and ditch this because LinkedIn was my main promotional channel. But then the career coaching ideas started to peter out. And I thought, okay, what can I do next? And I thought back to those LinkedIn compilations. And then I also saw that the newsletter business is something that you can do potentially sustainably. It's just a matter of figuring out the audience or the monetization model, whether it's going to be premium content or sponsorship. And so I thought, okay, why not give this a shot? And I still have savings left. I might as well give it a shot while I can. So that's kind of the plan right now, is that I'm working to scale TLDR Biotech. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot, but I'm trying to remind myself, like, hey, that's a good thing. You're growing it. And then next week, and I keep saying we, but it's me. It's like a royal we,
Yes.
Yeah. Next week, I'm going to my first conference as TLDR Biotech, which is meeting on the Mesa in Phoenix, which is a cell and gene therapy specific event. So very much looking forward to reporting on that in a media capacity.
Nice, nice. That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot in your story that makes for good discussion. One thing that I would
Mm-hmm.
love to ask, and to be real, I think we all suffered from this education bubble that you called it. Uh, we are, education is a good thing. We are in school, all the way with people, friends, family, whatever. The bubble is there from the beginning. So how do we realize what does it take, or what did it take for you to realize, well, wait a second, there is this other track here? Because you can say like, okay, well, I'm either at school or I'm either working, but this whole working thing doesn't never seem to be a real thing until you go do it, even if it's on a part-time scale while you're at school. So is it that people should have that kind of an internship or type of model where they experience some of the work during their schooling years so that they can really start seeing, okay, well, this is how the world moves, and how does it work?
It's a great question, Tommy. There's three things I'd want to unpack there. One is, I'll start with the last one you said. One is 100%, I think internships are super valuable. So getting like real world, in my case, scientific experience, if you're in engineering, like engineering experience, like just getting into the workplace. Unfortunately, I went to UBC Okanagan, which is a smaller UBC detachment out of Kelowna, British Columbia. And so at the time, there wasn't an internship program. So I wasn't able to actually get out into the workforce. But if there is that, to anyone listening that is in school and that opportunity exists, do it, right? Like, even if there was one other thing I regret. Well, there was the opportunity to go abroad as part of the program, but that would have pushed back my graduation a year. Looking back, and hindsight's 2020, I probably should have gone through with it just to experience it. So if you're listening to this, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to change your opinion, but like, don't worry if you're graduating 1 year more. You're going to live on average 80 years. I think you'll like 1 year is okay, and you're going to learn a lot of things about yourself. The other thing, so was that. there was a middle thing I forgot, but the first thing I'll address is how do you kind of break out of your bubble, I think was what you asked. For me, it took suffering an abject failure to break out of the bubble. And it sounds odd, we'll say, but I was very good academically, and that wasn't a gift. Like I worked very hard during schooling, both my undergrad and my high school and middle school. Like I was very academically motivated, right? But the problem with that was at one point I almost made it my identity, where I was like, I'm a straight A student. I'm a good student. So like you just hone in and like nail right into that, which limits your options. And the other thing is that it doesn't expose you to failure, and failure in a way where you don't lose, like, because you have this idea like, oh, if I fail a course, that's the end. Like that's like there's my identity gone. I'm gonna, I'm not gonna be able to get to the school I want to do. I'm not gonna be able to do this course. I'm not gonna be able to have those opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. And so you think you just catastrophize from there. And so for me, I had just been school, 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 getting good grades, and then even the summer research I did at UBC Okanagan, it's there is research going on, but it's not like I was in a lab of like 20, 30 people pumping out papers every month with a PI that is just super, super driven to publish. Like the PI I worked for, his name is Kevin Smith. He did some really interesting chromium organometallic chemistry. And it was a great opportunity, but it wasn't a high pressure, like it wasn't like a pressure cooker environment that you have at some of these bigger universities. So I didn't really understand what it's like to go to a big school and work 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday to Friday and then a half day on Saturday, right? I didn't know that that was expected. So having that reality check early on probably would have helped. But then going back to the failure thing, it wasn't until I got to, because when you're doing courses, it's very easy to be like, okay, this is the end goal. I need to get this percentage on the exam. I need to study this material. Okay, go do it. Right? It's a kind problem. There's this book, I forget the author's name, it's called Range, and they talk about kind versus wicked problems. So there was this guy who thought that, if I train a generation of chess prodigies, they'll be able to go and save the world, right? Because the idea is that to learn chess, you have to be super intellectually smart. You have to be able to recognize patterns, etc. But the problem with chess is that it's a kind problem. There's a fixed grid, and there's a fixed set of moves, and there's a very definite endpoint. And that's what schooling is like. But then you get to research, which is wicked, because there's no definite endpoint. There's no goal, right? And you have to be able to navigate this ambiguity, and you have to be willing to work within that ambiguity. And for me, that was a completely new experience. And I did not do well. If I had had that sort of failure and difficulty earlier on, I think I would have been more likely to break out of my bubble and break out of the path that I thought was set out for me, or at least the path that I thought I should take.
Yeah, but it also sounds like through your trajectory, even afterwards, that you were seeking those challenges where it was do or die type of thing, where, because you talk about moving into a sales job, and from what I know about, I used to go selling garbage bags and kitchen bags door
Yeah.
to door in Toronto. And like sales is really learning how to get that door like shut in your face and being okay with that and moving on to the next house and keep on going, and like don't take failure as the
Yeah.
end, but just bounce back, pivot, and keep moving forward. A lot of the lessons I learned from doing that kind of work and in sales seems to be that challenge of like be
Yeah.
okay with it and keep moving forward. What was that transition, from hands-on chemistry to sales that you thought, oh, geez, this seems more interesting now?
Yeah. So I'll start with what I didn't like. I didn't like being in the lab for a few reasons. One was that for me, it was pretty isolating. Like I like talking to people, I like interacting with people. And that part wasn't very fun for me. It was just being, pipetting and running GCs and mixing reactions, working in a glove box just wasn't my vibe.
Yeah.
But the other part was that I wasn't very good at it,
Yeah.
right? I didn't have I didn't think I had the right mindset or the right motivation to really think about these big problems within my field and come up with new ideas and read hundreds of papers in my spare time. So sales to me kind of married two things that I really enjoyed. One was learning about science. I love learning about it. I love learning about new things within the scientific space, be it chemistry and now life sciences and biology, but I'm not interested in doing it. I'm not good at doing it. So there's that. And then there's also the people aspect of it, where I get to interact with people on a daily basis. When I was in sales, I got to collaborate with people. And then I still got to help move science forward and in this case, the medical field forward by enabling people to do their job better, right? It wasn't, sure, there's money involved, like there's commission. If you make a sale, you make more money. That's great. But if that was all I care about, I would have gone and started selling CRMs or like marketing software, right? But for me, there was still that personal connection of this matters because it's helping people.
Mhm.
There is someone at the end of the day that is going to get a medicine or is going to get a test. And it's because somewhere down that supply chain, somewhere down that research train, I helped someone get a tool that helped them do their job better. That's where the real that's where the real motivation came for getting into sales within this space. And for sure there was that pressure you mentioned. I think I've been quite fortunate that on the capital equipment and like large contract side of things, which is where I worked, it's not as immediate because you're not selling something every day. It's going to
Mm.
come in like once a month, a couple times a year. So that pressure is kind of extended and then like squeezed into very specific moments where you have to like close something within a time frame within the end of the year as an example. But for the most part, I think I've been quite fortunate in my career with the people I've worked with and the companies I've been in, where sales has not been this like super scary, like Wolf of Wall Street kind of thing, but a little more ethical and you feel like you're genuinely helping push research and push science forward with what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. I can imagine that must feel quite rewarding. Tell us a little bit about, you as a scientist, how skeptic scientists can be. What are the challenges of selling to skeptic scientists, especially equipment for the lab, maybe something new that they might have not had before, or maybe it's just a newer model for a piece of equipment that has seen its day in the lab.
So scientists are skeptical by nature. I'll agree with that, Tommy. But I think as customers, as people, they share many things that are similar to
Mhm.
to selling other items or other services. The idea is that there's a problem or there's a difficulty that your product or service solves. And so the first thing there is to establish trust. And that's why I think that is, at least in scientific sales, I think that's the prevailing wisdom is that the best salespeople do have a scientific background or have a background within that area because you want to build that trust. And the fastest way to build trust with someone is to kind of show them, hey, I've been where you've been. I understand what you're going through. I understand the problems you're probably facing. I used to have to do Western blots. I used to have to do PCRs. I've never personally done one, but I'm sure someone else has. Like, this hypothetical salesperson has.
Yes.
And I understand the difficulties you're probably facing, and we have this new product that might be able to to help, right? Here's what you used to have to do. Here's what you can do now with this thing.
Mhm.
It's kind of like that. And then there's the difficulty of just getting their time because everyone's busy, everyone's working. So trying to get in through email or phone or even going in person, if you have academic accounts, you have to like kind of walk the halls. That's kind of the, I think that's kind of the difficulty
Yeah.
there in terms of getting in. Um, yeah, hope that
And
makes sense.
yeah, I mean they're critical. They're critical. They know their stuff obviously because they're living it in the lab. But so it, you have to deal with not only the scientific challenges, but now also the people challenges to be able to deliver the sale at the end, right?
Yeah,
And so learning about people, learning what moves people, is probably a good thing to have, right? A little
yeah.
psychology in there. Tell me a little bit, did you have to take, I mean, did you have to go through some training before you got in front of customers? Tell us a little bit about this sales period in your life.
It's a good question. I think so. I think the life sciences and scientific space as a whole, when it comes to sales, maybe now it's changed. When I got into it, I don't think the rigor that certain more sales oriented institutions have when it comes to training or process didn't really exist. So when I came into my first role, which granted it wasn't the most organized organization to begin with, but there was not a lot of like, okay, like here is how we sell, like here's the training manual, here's the process. There wasn't really a lot of that, so I had to kind of learn on my own.
Mhm.
Um, Same thing with the subsequent roles I had. There was still some more structure, but there wasn't like here's a course we recommend you take, or here's the structured process for making a sale or for going through the sales, at least the sales process that I covered, because I was mainly on the top end prospecting and getting in new clients, especially my last two roles. For those, I brought in some innovation because there was this thing called a sales engagement. So you were using tools to build sequences of phone, email, and LinkedIn to get in touch with multiple prospects simultaneously, kind of like a semi-automated platform. And those were at the time, and I think it still is now, were more or less ubiquitous within sales, especially within the software as a service space. But this was more or less unheard of within the organizations I had jumped into, right? And that might have been just a function of biotech and pharma is a little bit more cautious. They're not gonna jump on the next technological sales thing immediately because they have bigger things to deal with. So I had to kind of bring those in.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one time um, we had an in-person meeting for one of my roles, and we had a sales trainer come in, like this guy who was an executive at a big diagnostics company. I think he was moving to a different one. And we got to my section where we were talking about outbound prospecting and sales engagement. He didn't know what those were, right? Because to them, it's like, I guess, just straight up cold calling or use marketing to bring in leads. So the actual actively going out to find clients that way, that was a new concept, especially when it came to using these tools, like the software tools, as opposed to just like flipping a Rolodex or a phone book and calling people. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, you must have picked up a lot of good good guidance tidbits that probably I'm thinking led you to start thinking about this coaching business that you started to get into. Tell us a little bit about that transition and maybe what are some of the biggest misconceptions that we have as scientists about business roles and about how to help uh, us overcome some of these misconceptions?
I think the biggest misconception might be what people imagine a sales rep to be, or at least the ideal sales rep within the scientific space. The first when you think of salespeople, the first thing you might think of colloquially is a used car salesman. So they're just trying to sell a lemon to whatever person walks by. It doesn't matter if the car is working or not. They're just going to try and offload it, right? So you have these assumptions that you're trying to sell things that maybe don't work as advertised to people that don't actually need them. So there's a very and then in your day-to-day life when you're dealing with salespeople, it's typically in if you're at a car dealership or you pick up the phone, it's a telemarketer. That's kind of or you go to the cell phone store and you're getting a new cell phone. Like that's kind of the space that most of us operate in when it comes to salespeople. But when it comes to business sales, especially in the scientific space, there isn't a lot of room for that. I would hope there's not a lot of room for that sort of we're selling a crap product that doesn't work, because the market should take care of it. And even then, we're scientists, we're going to look at the evidence, we're going to try and piece together, is this actually what they say it is? And so it is more of a we'll say it's more ethical. There is more trust that's being put in, and the things that you're actually doing and developing should work and are genuinely going to push forward research and push forward the medical field. That's what it really comes down to.
And I think you make a very important and strong point about the ethics and the level of ethics as you start doing B2B type of transactions, and what it is that it's, you're not selling a can of Coca-Cola. You're selling probably services and probably transactions that are much more person to person and much more dependency related, right? And people have to depend on each other to make it work. And so what was it that got you thinking about this coaching, career coaching business? And what made you say, well, I think I want to be an entrepreneur and do it, go at it on my own? And I gotta tell you, man, that takes a lot of courage, and it's awesome because there aren't that many people that are willing to take that leap, and go move forward with it.
It takes a lot of courage and also a lot of ignorance about what you're actually getting into. I'll say that. So I mentioned my partner. She has been running a business, like fully remote business, with a handful of employees for the past, I think, 5 or 6 years, even before we started dating. And after the pandemic started to kind of ease off, we would go to these conferences, which were all remote entrepreneurs, like essentially digital nomads. Like they would all run their own businesses and they were able to live wherever in the world. And that really caught my attention because it was just really interesting to think, oh, like you don't actually have to be in a specific location to work these days. There are people that are able to build these businesses from nothing. And I was looking around at all the people at these conferences and I was thinking, I'm no different than these people, right? What's stopping me from building something that I'm proud of and that can sustain my lifestyle and that can allow me this flexibility? So that's where kind of the transition came. And so, I kind of knew at that point, once I started to consider this shift, I kind of knew it would be a difficult sell for a big biotech or biotech services company to be like, I want to work from wherever in the world. Okay, well, there's tax implications, there's legal implications, employment, like it's all just very messy. And so we unfortunately, like my last role, we had to part ways because of that. But they're doing amazing work. I support what Omnia Bio is doing, but that was the point where I kind of shifted into my own thing. And so we actually we were out of the country for about 8 months in total. So doing that like full blown digital nomad, trying to build a business remotely, which was a challenge.
Yeah.
Working very odd times, like working from around 4 or 5 p.m. till around 3 in the morning to try and make the time zones work. But it was a really good experience. I don't regret doing it. I am glad to be back in Vancouver because you do realize that it is one of the most beautiful and diverse places in the world, and you just have like all this fresh air and clean water and these parks that are very hard to find elsewhere. But that was kind of the I hope that answers the questions as to how I like got into the I guess at that point it's how I got into the entrepreneurship thing, not specifically the career coaching thing.
So what was the career coaching thing that you thought, oh, okay, this is the one? The digital nomad thing is so interesting, and I again it's mesmerizing. Let's put it that way. But
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about this career coaching business. What was it? What was it that you said, oh, this
Yeah.
is for me?
I I was thinking about what are some things that overlap with my experience or my interest area. So I liked sales.
Mhm.
I liked helping people in that capacity, and I had done a lot of tutoring back in the day. So I thought, okay, maybe this could work if I put these together and I help people get into scientific role, like into sales roles from a scientific point of view, like coaching.
Yeah,
Why not give it a shot? Right.
yeah.
And it's pretty low barrier. These days, setting up your own business is very low barrier to entry. Just got
Mm,
to register the name and then put up a website. You don't even need a website now. Just LinkedIn is enough.
yeah,
Put some content together and then just start trying to get clients.
yeah.
So that's kind of where that came in. And it ramped up a bit. I had a handful of clients going, but this was also part of it is my fault because um, that specific transition is very, as we mentioned earlier, kind of niche. Like not a lot of people are looking for that specific move. So
Yeah.
near the end, I did branch out into like, okay, just general commercial roles. You want to be in marketing or you want to be in customer success. I can help you get those sort of roles. But the other thing was, this was end of 2023, and the job market was probably like that was the worst time to start a career coaching business because the job market was also very, very bad.
Yes.
And the other thing, the last thing is that with a career coaching or any sort of coaching business, really, the scale of the business is the scale of your audience. And even though I was growing on LinkedIn, I was nowhere near the size of the audience I would need to kind of sustain something like that. Because you need to be able to amplify your voice very, very far and
Mm.
wide and be able to get clients from all over. So it was still a good experience. I still learned a lot. I hope I helped some people doing that, but it ultimately it was just and that's part of it when you start out on this. And I'm not talking as a seasoned. I'm not seasoned at all, but when you start out in entrepreneurship, you have to be willing to fail once, twice, three, 10 times. And so that was my first one. I'm still here. I'm still kicking for now. So I think it was a good experience.
And it sounds thrilling and daunting at the same time. I think it's gutsy as a move, and it's great though because I'm sure you learned a lot. What has been the biggest challenge when starting TLDR Biotech as a newsletter? What was that transition that you saw? Okay, maybe the newsletter is the way to go here.
One of the things that I missed when it came to the career coaching part was that I wasn't as tuned into the industry that I cared about, which is biotech, cell and gene therapy, biologics, like this, I wasn't as honed in or as involved in that industry, which I really enjoy. I really enjoy learning about it. I like keeping up with it. I like talking to people in that industry. And so this would have been a way to really keep in touch. And I also saw a potential need, like the whole sales pitch for TLDR as a free newsletter to put in your inbox is that there is just so much going on within the biotech and pharma space. And it's one thing to manage your inbox just from work, but then to have, a couple dozen, 2 dozen emails a day from all of the news agencies and press releases and everything is a lot to handle.
Yeah.
So this is one email, everything is categorized, and you can just skim it, and you can kind of get a gist as to what's going on.
Mhm.
That's the premise there. And I thought this could potentially have legs. I think there's a demand for this. I would read this if this existed. And especially if you're not like deep in the science, like the newsletter is not really great for scientists per se, because they don't need to know every single fundraiser, every single clinical trial, or every single partnership that's occurring. But if you're in recruiting, if you're in business development, if you're an analyst or an investment banker or work for venture capital and need to have a very holistic, high level overview as to what's going on, this is, unbiased, I'll say this is a pretty good resource.
Yeah. No, that sounds pretty much, from what I've seen of the newsletter, that's pretty much it. It gives you a good overview of what's happening, what are FDA approvals that are passing through, what are new deals, new products. It sounds very interesting too. And you mentioned at some point in time monetizing off of the newsletter. For somebody that is naive, that doesn't know, like, how do you monetize out of a newsletter? How do you make a living creating a newsletter?
So to answer what you just said, how to make a living off of a newsletter, I would love to find that out myself. That's still a work in progress. So I'm doing some like marketing, writing stuff on the side to kind of keep the lights on, but the newsletter is really the passion project that I want to scale up big. But to answer the monetization question, there's two big areas you could get into. One is premium content. So people pay to access your newsletter or pay to access certain content. So right now, the way it's set up is that there's a donation, like it's $5 a month. If you want to pay, you don't have to. It doesn't change anything, but it's just like if you want to support the newsletter, pay $5 and you get a little thank you note within every newsletter edition saying thanks for paying. But at this point, there's nothing associated with that. I may in the future add in some like, we'll say, trend analysis or long form content or overviews, market reports, etc. that would be tied into that subscription.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I'm trying to manage things already, and that's just a lot more to kind of pile on.
Yeah.
The other part of it is sponsorship. So advertisers, in this case, it would be maybe CDMOs or instrument or consumable manufacturers, consultancies, anybody in the life sciences biotech space that is looking to get in touch with people in that industry, they could potentially advertise on the platform, on your newsletter, and they would pay you a fee, or they would pay some sort of success related metric to have that slot in the newsletter. With the industry I'm operating in, it is very niche. So I don't know if you've heard of, there's some newsletters like Morning Brew is one really big newsletter business. They have a very general audience, right? It's just like people that are interested in business news. So to make that monetizable, you need to have like potentially hundreds of thousands of subscribers to make it worth your while, because the value per 1,000 views, let's say, is going to be a lot lower than with a newsletter like mine, where it's hyper focused to a specific niche. That sponsorship model, and this is what I'm banking on, is that sponsorship model might be monetizable at a much lower number. Let's say at 3,000, 5,000 people. Whereas the Premium content, that one you could scale up from zero, but then there's the effort you have to put into it, right? You have to be able to understand what your audience wants, what sort of unique takes you have when it comes to content and when it comes to the market. What is going to get people to be like, okay, this is interesting. I'm going to pay to read this, or I'm going to pay to get access to it. So that's kind of the two branches of how to make this work, which is for me still a work in progress.
And so is it evolving? Is the role of the newsletters evolving as we become more niche based? Is that at all something that you're seeing coming down the line with TLDR Biotech, for example?
Maybe at one point there might be like spin-off newsletters, right? Because the sources I follow are very US and Europe focused. So there may be like TLDR Biotech Asia or something like that, where it's like focused on those sorts of markets.
Oh, gotcha.
And I know there are a few different individuals that I follow that are very niched in, not necessarily with a newsletter, but with specific services. Like there's one person, I forget his name, but he has this business called OncoLeader, which they help, from my understanding, they do marketing for oncology and cancer-based biotech and life science organizations. So it's like super niched into that. There's another one that's also cancer-focused. I'm sure there are groups like that that are autoimmune or specific disease focused. So you can really niche down. But at the get-go, I was like, I like all of pharma and biotech. Let's see if I can make this work. So maybe later I'll get a little more specific. Who knows?
Well, it sounds like exciting work, thrilling work, and it sounds like you are really making a good go at it, and you're excelling. I'm hopeful that you will excel also at this conference in Mesa, Arizona. Um, Really, Anis, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I would have asked you?
No, I think this was a great interview. You really paced it well.
Oh, good.
You're good at this, Tommy.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much for the kind words. Anis Fahandej-Sadi, who is the current founder and head editor of TLDR Biotech. And people can subscribe to your newsletter, TLDR Biotech, by going to your LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, if you even just Google TLDR Biotech, I'm the first thing that comes up. So that's an easy way to find it.
Well, thank you. Now, if they also Google you under Pathfinder, they'll be able to find you as well.
Exactly.
So awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being on the program today and for sharing your trajectory, your journey with us today.
Thank you, Tommy, for the opportunity. It was great.
Awesome. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us once again, and remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel.